The ships appeared without warning. One moment, the sky above Earth was clear and blue. The next moment, massive alien vessels blocked out the sun. They hung in the atmosphere like dark clouds, larger than any city, their metal hulls reflecting the light of a world that had no idea what was coming. Katie Morris stood in the United Nations building, staring at the video feeds from around the world. She was Earth's lead diplomat, the woman chosen to speak for humanity if aliens ever made contact. She had imagined this moment countless times. In her dreams, first contact was peaceful, full of hope and wonder. But the readings coming from those ships told a different story. They were weapons platforms built for war. She pressed the communication button with shaking hands. "This is Ambassador Katie Morris of Earth. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations. Please respond." Static filled the speakers. Then a voice came through, rough and filled with amusement. "Diplomatic relations? How amusing. I am Commander Tharn of the Krelix Dominion. You will surrender all military assets immediately. Resistance will be met with total destruction." Katie felt her heart sink. "Commander Tharn, surely we can discuss this. Earth has resources we can share. We can establish trade, exchange knowledge. There's no need for conflict." Tharn's laugh was cold. "Trade with primitives? You misunderstand your position, human. You are not our equals. You are our property now. This is not a negotiation." Before Katie could respond, the first beam of light shot down from the ships. It struck New York City with the force of a nuclear weapon. The island of Manhattan vanished in a flash of white fire. The shockwave shattered windows in buildings 50 miles away. 8 million people died in an instant. Katie screamed, but no sound came out. She watched the screens as more beams fell from the sky. Tokyo burned. Mumbai collapsed. São Paulo disappeared under clouds of ash and fire. The aliens were targeting the largest cities first, places where millions of people lived and worked and loved. Within an hour, 500 million people were dead. General Jake Sullivan ran through the underground bunker in Colorado, barking orders at his staff. He was in charge of Earth's defense, but they had trained for wars against other humans. They had tanks and jets and missiles designed to fight armies on the ground. They had nothing that could touch ships in orbit with shields that made them untouchable. "Get me firing solutions on those vessels," Jake shouted. "Launch everything we have." The missiles flew. Hundreds of them, humanity's most advanced weapons. They exploded harmlessly against the Krelix shields like fireworks bouncing off a wall. The aliens didn't even slow down. They kept firing, kept burning, kept killing. Jake watched his screens fill with casualty reports. The numbers climbed so fast they blurred together. 100 million, 200 million, 300 million. And still the beams kept falling, turning Earth's greatest cities into craters filled with glass and ash. In Chicago, a young medic named Danny Cooper pulled survivors from collapsed buildings. He was 24 years old, fresh out of medical school, and he had never seen anything like this. The hospital where he worked was gone. The streets were filled with fire and screaming and the smell of burning flesh. He found a little girl trapped under a piece of concrete. She was crying for her mother. Danny dug with his bare hands until his fingers bled, pulling away chunks of rubble until he could reach her. She was maybe 6 years old, with dark hair and eyes wide with terror. "It's okay," Danny said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I've got you. You're safe now." That was when the Krelix soldiers landed. They came down in small ships, armed with weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They were tall, with gray skin and eyes like black glass. They moved through the ruins, shooting anyone they found. Not to capture them. Not to enslave them, just to kill. Danny grabbed the little girl and ran. He heard the soldiers behind him, heard their weapons firing. A blast of energy hit the wall next to his head, showering him with broken brick. He turned a corner looking for anywhere to hide, but there was nowhere to go. The city was burning. The sky was full of alien ships, and humanity was losing. Danny set the girl down behind an overturned car. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't make a sound." He stood up, raising his hands. Maybe they would accept surrender. Maybe they would show mercy. He had to try. "Please," Danny called out to the approaching soldiers. "We surrender. We won't fight. Just let the children go. Please." The Krelix soldier looked at him. For a moment, Danny thought he saw something like curiosity in those black eyes. Then the soldier raised his weapon and shot Danny in the leg. The pain was incredible. Danny fell, clutching his shattered knee. The soldier walked past him without a second glance. Danny heard the little girl scream. Then he heard the weapon fire one more time. Then silence. Danny lay in the ruins, bleeding, listening to the sounds of his world dying. He passed out from the pain, and maybe that was a mercy. Katie Morris made 17 more attempts to contact the Krelix. Each time she begged for a ceasefire. Each time she offered anything Earth could give. Resources, territory, complete surrender if it would stop the killing. Each time, Tharn laughed at her. "You should have submitted immediately," Tharn told her during their last conversation. "This suffering is your punishment for resisting. Every death is your fault, Ambassador. Remember that." Then the Krelix started targeting hospitals. They bombed refugee centers where people had fled for safety. They shot down evacuation ships trying to leave the planet. They weren't just conquering Earth. They were teaching humanity a lesson about what happened to species that dared to exist without permission. The invasion lasted 3 days. When it was over, most of Earth's major cities were destroyed. 2 billion people were dead. The survivors huddled in bunkers and shelters, waiting to see what the aliens would do next. The answer came quickly. The Krelix landed ground forces and began rounding up humans. They put them in camps, sorted them like cattle. The strong ones were sent to work in mines, tearing resources from Earth's crust. The weak ones were killed. Children were separated from their parents. Families were broken apart. The Krelix set up command centers in the ruins of human cities. They broadcast messages on every remaining screen and radio. "You belong to the Dominion now. Obey or die. Those are your only choices." Small groups of humans tried to fight back. They ambushed Krelix patrols, sabotaged equipment, struck from the shadows and then disappeared. But every attack brought terrible revenge. The Krelix would execute 100 civilians for every one of their soldiers killed. They made the survivors watch, made them understand that resistance only brought more suffering. Jake Sullivan coordinated what was left of Earth's military from his bunker. Most of his forces were dead or scattered. The few units that remained were running out of ammunition, running out of hope. He received reports from around the world, and each one was worse than the last. But then he received a different kind of message. It came from a hidden facility deep underground, from a scientist named Dr. Helen Cross. Jake had almost forgotten about her project. It was something experimental, something that had seemed too dangerous to use back when humanity still had other options. "General Sullivan," Helen's message read, "Project Lazarus is ready. It worked in testing, but you need to understand what it does. What it costs, call me. We need to talk before you decide." Jake stared at the message. He didn't know what Project Lazarus was exactly. It had been classified above his level, something the government had funded before the invasion. But Helen's tone worried him. She sounded afraid, and Helen Cross wasn't afraid of anything. He made the call. Helen appeared on his screen, looking tired and worn. She had been beautiful once, but the invasion had aged her. Her hair was going gray, and her eyes had dark circles under them. "Tell me about Lazarus," Jake said. Helen took a breath. "It's a weapon system, but not the way you're thinking. It doesn't fire bullets or missiles. It changes people. We found a way to link human neural patterns to tactical computers. It makes soldiers faster, smarter, able to predict enemy movements. But there's a side effect." "What kind of side effect?" "It turns off parts of the brain. The parts that feel fear, the parts that feel mercy, the parts that feel anything, really." The test subjects became perfect soldiers. No hesitation, no doubt, no compassion. They win every fight because they don't care about winning. They just execute the mission. Jake felt cold. "You're talking about turning people into machines." "I'm talking about giving us a chance to survive," Helen said quietly. "The Krelix are winning because they don't care about our lives. Lazarus makes us not care either. It levels the playing field. Can you reverse it? After the war is over, can you bring people back?" Helen looked away. "I don't know, maybe, but Jake, there's something else." The effect spreads. People near active Lazarus soldiers start showing the same symptoms. It's like an infection. If we activate this, we might not be able to control how far it goes. Jake closed his eyes. He thought about the billions of dead. He thought about the camps, the executions, the children screaming for parents they would never see again. He thought about humanity dying slowly under Krelix rule, ground down until nothing remained but slaves and memories. "How soon can we activate it?" he asked. 3 months passed since the Krelix took control of Earth. 3 months of darkness and suffering that felt like centuries. The aliens had established themselves as rulers, and they ruled with cruelty that seemed to have no purpose except to break the human spirit. In what used to be Seattle, a woman named Amy Fletcher moved through abandoned subway tunnels. She had been a school teacher before the invasion, someone who spent her days teaching children to read and dream about the future. Now she spent her days trying to keep those children alive. Amy led a group of 42 people through the underground. Most of them were children she had rescued from Krelix work camps. Some were as young as 5, torn from their parents and put to work sorting through rubble for valuable materials. Amy had watched guards beat children who moved too slowly. She had seen them shoot kids who cried for their mothers. So she started stealing them, one at a time, leading them into the tunnels where the Krelix didn't like to go. The youngest child was a boy named Peter. He was 6 years old and didn't speak anymore. Something in the camps had broken him. He just held Amy's hand and stared at nothing with huge, empty eyes. Amy carried him when he got too tired to walk, whispering promises she didn't know if she could keep. "We'll be safe soon," she told him. "I'll find us somewhere safe." But Earth had no safe places left. The Krelix were everywhere, and they were getting better at finding the humans who tried to hide. Amy knew it was only a matter of time before they found her tunnel network. She just hoped she could save a few more children before that happened. In the underground bunker, Jake Sullivan met with what remained of Earth's leadership. There weren't many left. Most governments had collapsed when the capitals burned. The survivors were scattered, hidden in bunkers and caves, trying to coordinate resistance with equipment that barely worked. Victor Lane was one of the council members who had survived. He had been a senator before the invasion, a man who believed in peace and diplomacy. Now he sat at Jake's table looking older than his 50 years, arguing against Project Lazarus. "We can't do this," Victor said, his voice tired. "If we use this technology, we become monsters. We lose the very thing that makes us human." "We've already lost," someone else said. 2 billion dead. The rest enslaved. What's left to protect? Our humanity, Victor insisted. Our souls. If we turn ourselves into killing machines, the Krelix win, even if we defeat them militarily. They'll have destroyed what we are. Jake listened to them argue. He had listened to the same arguments for weeks while Project Lazarus sat ready, waiting for final approval. Part of him agreed with Victor. The thought of changing people at such a basic level, of turning off the parts of the brain that made them feel and care, it horrified him. But then he would receive another report. Another massacre. Another camp discovered where thousands had been worked to death. Another village wiped out because someone had killed a Krelix soldier. The numbers kept climbing and they didn't stop. Katie Morris sat in the corner of the room saying nothing. She had changed in the 3 months since the invasion. Her clothes were dirty and torn. Her face was scarred from an explosion that had nearly killed her. But the biggest change was in her eyes. They were cold now, empty of the hope and kindness that had once defined her. "Katie," Victor said, turning to her, "you understand this better than anyone. You tried to make peace with them. Tell them we can't lose our humanity. Tell them there has to be another way." Katie looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "They gave us a choice, Victor. Submit or die. We tried submitting. We offered them everything. They chose to make us suffer anyway. Not because they needed to, because they wanted to, because they enjoy it. That doesn't mean we should become like them." "No," Katie agreed. "It means we should become worse." The room fell silent. Jake looked at Katie and saw his own thoughts reflected back at him. They had tried mercy. They had tried compassion. The Krelix had taught them that those things were weaknesses, tools that got you killed. Maybe it was time to learn the lesson. "We'll vote," Jake said. "Activate Lazarus or keep fighting the old way." "But we vote now. We don't have time for more debate." The vote was close. In the end, Lazarus was approved by a single vote. Victor left the room without speaking, and Jake never saw him again. Some said he went out into the ruins and let the Krelix find him. Others said he killed himself. Jake didn't know and didn't have time to find out. Dr. Helen Cross prepared the first group of volunteers. Danny Cooper was among them, along with 19 others. They were all soldiers who had seen the worst of the invasion. They had lost families, lost friends, lost everything that mattered. They had nothing left to lose, which made them perfect for what came next. "You understand what this will do to you?" Helen asked each of them. "You won't feel fear anymore. You won't feel sadness. You won't feel much of anything. You'll be able to kill without hesitation, without regret, but you might not be able to turn it off. Danny nodded. His leg had healed, but he still walked with a limp. Every step reminded him of the little girl he had tried to save, the one the Kralix had killed just to prove they could. I don't want to feel anything anymore, he said. Feelings don't help. They just hurt. The others said similar things. They were broken people, ready to break themselves further if it meant striking back at the enemy. Helen wanted to feel bad about what she was doing to them. She wanted to feel guilt. But the truth was she felt nothing. Maybe Lazarus was already affecting her, spreading through proximity like she had feared. Or maybe the invasion had broken her too. The activation process took 6 hours. The volunteers lay in chairs while machines rewired their brains, shutting down neural pathways and opening others. Some of them screamed. Some of them cried. When it was over, they sat up changed. Danny looked at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Helen ran tests, asked questions, checked responses. Everything worked perfectly. Too perfectly. The man in front of her had Danny's face and Danny's memories, but something essential was gone. The spark that made him a person had been replaced with something cold and efficient. How do you feel? Helen asked. Danny thought about the question. I don't, he said finally. And it's better this way. In Seattle, Amy Fletcher's luck ran out. A Kralix patrol found the entrance to her tunnels. She heard them coming and tried to evacuate the children, but there were too many, and they moved too slowly. She got them to a dead-end section and stood between them and the approaching soldiers. The Kralix commander looked at the cowering children with something like amusement. He was young for a commander, probably given the position as a reward for service. He carried a weapon that hummed with power and he aimed it at the smallest child. Please, Amy said, stepping forward. Take me, I'm the one who stole them from the camps. They're just children. They didn't do anything wrong. Take me and let them go. The commander tilted his head, considering. For a moment, Amy thought he might agree. For a moment, she thought there might be mercy in him. Then he shot the child anyway. Peter, the little boy who didn't speak, who had survived the camps and the tunnels and everything else. He died without making a sound, which seemed fitting somehow. He hadn't made a sound in months. Amy screamed and lunged for the commander. His soldiers grabbed her, held her back. The commander walked through the children slowly, looking at each one. Some of them cried. Some of them begged. He shot half of them methodically, one by one. Then he stopped. The rest are your punishment, he told Amy. You will watch us take them back to the camps. You will know that everything you did was worthless. You will know that trying to save them only made their suffering last longer. They took the surviving children. They took Amy too, binding her hands and dragging her through the tunnels. She fought and screamed until her voice gave out. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. The Kralix had won, and they would keep winning, because they didn't care about anything except power. The footage of Amy's capture was broadcast on every remaining screen on Earth. The Kralix liked to show humans what happened to those who resisted. They wanted everyone to see, to understand that hope was a lie and rebellion only brought pain. Katie Morris watched the footage in Jake's bunker. She saw Amy begging for the children. She saw Peter die. She saw the cold amusement in the Kralix commander's eyes. Something inside her, some last piece of the old Katie who believed in peace and diplomacy, finally shattered. How many Lazarus soldiers do we have active? She asked. 20, Jake said. They're running drills, learning to use their new abilities. It's not enough. We need more. Hundreds. Thousands. Helen says the effect is spreading faster than she expected. Anyone who spends time near the Lazarus soldiers starts showing similar symptoms. If we deploy them widely, half of humanity might end up affected. Katie kept watching the screen. The Kralix were loading Amy and the children onto a transport. Amy's face was blank now, empty of hope. Just like Katie's. Good, Katie said. Let it spread. Let everyone become like them. It's the only way we win, Jake wanted to argue. He wanted to say there had to be another way. That they couldn't sacrifice their humanity to save their species. But he looked at the screen and saw Amy's broken face, and he couldn't find the words. The first strike came at dawn. Danny Cooper led his team of 20 Lazarus soldiers into what used to be Denver. The Kralix had turned the city into a military garrison, housing 5,000 soldiers and support staff. It was supposed to be impregnable, protected by shields and automated defenses that could destroy anything that approached. The Krelix never saw the attack coming. Danny's team moved through the ruins like ghosts. They didn't communicate through radios. They didn't need to. The Lazarus effect linked their minds, letting them think and act as one organism. They knew where each other was at all times. They predicted enemy movements before the enemy made them. The first Krelix guard died without seeing his killer. Danny slit his throat from behind, caught the body, lowered it silently. The next guard turned at the sound of a footstep. She had time to raise her weapon before 3 bullets hit her from different directions. She dropped without firing a shot. The humans moved deeper into the garrison. They killed quietly, efficiently, leaving no evidence behind. By the time the Krelix realized they were under attack, half their security force was dead. The garrison commander activated the alarm. Soldiers poured out of barracks, weapons ready. They expected to find a few desperate humans, maybe a suicide attack. Instead, they found something they had never imagined. They found humans who didn't fear death, didn't hesitate, didn't make mistakes. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the garrison was silent. 5,000 Krelix lay dead. Not one human soldier had fallen. Danny walked through the halls, stepping over bodies, checking for survivors. He found one. A young Krelix soldier, no older than the human equivalent of 20, hiding in a storage room. The soldier raised his hands, dropping his weapon. His eyes were wide with fear. "Please," the soldier said in broken English. "I surrender." "I don't want to fight, please." Danny looked at him. The old Danny would have felt pity. The old Danny would have taken him prisoner, treated him humanely. But the old Danny was gone. "You taught us that mercy is weakness," Danny said quietly. "Thank you for the lesson." He pulled the trigger. The soldier died before he could scream. Danny moved on to the next room, searching for more. He found none. They were thorough, him and his team. They always were. Before leaving the garrison, Danny spray-painted a message on the wall in Krelix blood. It was in their language, simple and clear. "This is mercy." Commander Tharn received the report from Denver with disbelief. 5,000 soldiers gone in a single night. No survivors, no witnesses, just bodies and a message written in blood. He called for more information, demanding to know what had happened. The reports from the survivors near Denver were confusing. They spoke of humans who moved like machines, who knew where you were before you moved, who killed without emotion or hesitation. It sounded like propaganda, like fear making people see ghosts. Then 3 more garrisons went silent. One in Paris, one in Mumbai, one in Tokyo. Each time the pattern was the same. No human casualties, no Krelix survivors, and that message painted in blood. "This is mercy." Tharn finally understood that something had changed. The humans had been desperate and broken. They had been easy to control, easy to kill. But now something was different. Now they were fighting back and they were winning. Dr. Helen Cross monitored the Lazarus soldiers from her facility. The neural readings were stable, the soldiers operating at peak efficiency. But something worried her. The effect was spreading faster than her models predicted. She tested civilians who lived near deployment zones. They showed early signs of the Lazarus effect. Reduced emotional responses, increased tactical thinking, slower reaction times to emotional stimuli. It wasn't as strong as in the soldiers, but it was there and growing. Helen ran simulations. If the spread continued at current rates, millions of humans would be affected within months. Tens of millions within a year. It would become a cascade, spreading through proximity like a virus, changing humanity at a fundamental level. She should have been afraid. She should have warned someone. But when she tried to feel fear about it, she felt nothing. The effect had reached her too. She was becoming one of them, losing the parts of herself that made her human, and she didn't care. Katie Morris visited the Lazarus facility between missions. She wanted to see the soldiers, wanted to understand what they had become. She found Danny in the training area, practicing hand-to-hand combat with another soldier. They moved with inhuman precision, blocking and striking in patterns that seemed almost choreographed. But it wasn't choreography. It was the Lazarus effect, letting them predict each other's movements, adjust in real time, fight as perfectly as human bodies could manage. When they finished, Danny noticed Katie watching. He walked over, his face blank. "Ambassador Morris," he said. His voice was flat, empty of inflection. "Are you okay?" Katie asked. She knew it was a stupid question the moment it left her mouth. Danny thought about it. Okay is a word that requires caring. I don't care anymore. It's efficient. Do you remember who you were before Lazarus? Yes, I remember being afraid. I remember crying. I remember wanting to save people. He paused. It seems inefficient now. Those feelings made me weak, made me slow. They would have gotten me killed. Katie looked into his eyes and saw nothing. No pain, no anger, no humanity. Just cold calculation. She wondered if she looked the same to him. Danny, we're winning. The Kraliks are losing garrisons every night, but I need to know. If we win, if we drive them off Earth, can you go back? Can you be who you were? Danny shook his head. I don't want to go back. That person couldn't do what needs to be done. He would have hesitated. He would have shown mercy to the enemy. He would have gotten more people killed. So this is permanent? Yes, and that's good. We need to be this way, all of us. Katie left the facility feeling cold. She knew Danny was right. The old way of fighting, the human way, it hadn't worked. Mercy and compassion had gotten them enslaved. Only by becoming something else could they win. But she wondered if winning was worth it if they lost themselves in the process. Then she realized she was thinking about philosophy while her species was dying. She pushed the thoughts away. They weren't useful. The Kraliks launched a counteroffensive. Commander Tharn assembled his full military force and sent them against the human resistance. 10,000 soldiers supported by heavy weapons and air support. They targeted the remnants of human civilization, planning to crush them completely before this new threat could grow stronger. They expected broken refugees and desperate fighters. Instead, they found every city had transformed into a killing ground. In Chicago, Kraliks forces entered the ruins expecting easy targets. The humans let them advance deep into the city before attacking. Civilians who had shown no resistance suddenly rose up with weapons and perfect coordination. They had been hiding, waiting, preparing. The Kraliks realized too late that these weren't soldiers. They were ordinary people. Affected by proximity to Lazarus soldiers, they had lost their fear, lost their hesitation. An old man with a rifle moved like a trained sniper. A teenage girl threw grenades with the precision of a demolitions expert. They fought with cold efficiency, predicted enemy movements, worked together like parts of a single organism. The Kraliks regiment tried to retreat. They found the exit routes blocked, trapped. The humans hunted them through the ruins, killing methodically. By morning, the regiment was gone. 8,000 Kraliks dead. 50 human casualties, all from friendly fire or accidents. The same scene played out in a dozen cities. The Kraliks couldn't understand it. Humans weren't supposed to fight like this. They were supposed to be emotional, irrational, easy to predict. These creatures were something else entirely. One Kraliks regiment tried to surrender after losing 70% of their force. They broadcast on all frequencies begging for mercy, offering to lay down their weapons. The human forces surrounded them, listened to their pleas, and then opened fire. There were no survivors. When asked why they killed soldiers who surrendered, the human commander said simply, "They didn't accept our surrender. Why should we accept theirs?" Jake Sullivan watched the tactical displays from his bunker. Red marks showed Kraliks' positions. Green marks showed human forces. Day by day, the red marks disappeared. His forces were winning, pushing the aliens back, reclaiming Earth meter by meter. But the reports from the field disturbed him. His soldiers weren't celebrating victories. They weren't mourning fallen comrades. They sent back brief, factual reports and then continued the mission. When he read their words, they sounded like they were written by machines, not people. He tried to feel proud of what they were accomplishing. He tried to feel hope that humanity would survive. But the feelings didn't come. He sat at his desk processing information, making tactical decisions and feeling nothing about any of it. Helen Cross was right. The effect was spreading. It was reaching him now, turning off parts of his brain that made him care about the consequences of his orders. He knew he should be afraid of what he was becoming. But fear required caring, and he didn't care anymore. The Kraliks tried one final offensive. Tharn assembled every soldier he had left on Earth, 30,000 troops, and threw them at the human stronghold in Colorado. If he could kill Jake Sullivan and destroy the... 6 months after the Kraliks left Earth, the galaxy began to hear stories. Strange stories about humans who fought without fear, who showed no mercy, who hunted their enemies to extinction. At first, the other species dismissed them as propaganda or exaggeration, but the stories kept coming and they were all the same. The Galactic Council occupied a massive station at the center of known space. It was ancient, built by civilizations that had died long ago, maintained by the 100 species that made up the council. They met here to discuss trade, resolve disputes, and maintain the peace that had lasted for thousands of years. High Speaker Jen presided over the council. He was old even by his species' long-lived standards. He had seen wars and peace, had negotiated treaties between species that hated each other. He believed in the council's mission, in the idea that civilization meant dialogue and compromise. But the reports coming from Krelix space troubled him. They spoke of human forces attacking Krelix colony worlds, not just military targets but civilian settlements. Entire planets were being cleansed of all Krelix life. No survivors, no refugees, just empty worlds, and that same message painted everywhere. This is mercy. The Council had known about Earth's invasion. They had received the Krelix Declaration of Conquest and filed it away. The rules were clear. They didn't intervene in conflicts involving pre-spacefaring species. It was sad, but it was the law. Earth wasn't part of the Council, so Earth's problems weren't the Council's concern. But now Earth's problems were becoming everyone's problems. Jen called an emergency session. Representatives from 100 species gathered in the Great Chamber, a space designed to hold thousands and make everyone feel small. The architecture was meant to inspire humility and cooperation. Today it just felt cold. We have received distress calls from 17 Krelix colony worlds, Jen announced. All report human attacks. All report complete destruction of population centers. The humans appear to have acquired Krelix vessels and are using them to wage a campaign of extermination. A representative from the Valen species stood. The Valen were ancient and wise, one of the founding species of the Council. High Speaker, the Krelix invaded Earth without provocation. Perhaps the humans are simply defending themselves. By hunting Krelix across multiple star systems, Jen asked. By targeting civilians who had nothing to do with the invasion? This goes beyond defense. This is revenge. Another representative spoke up. What would you have us do? The Krelix brought this on themselves. They violated every principle we stand for when they invaded Earth. And now humans are violating those same principles. Jen said, if we ignore this, we set a precedent. We tell the galaxy that genocide is acceptable as long as you were wronged first. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for intervention, for sending council forces to stop the humans before they destroyed the entire Krelix species. Others argued that the Krelix deserved what they got, that the Council's inaction during the invasion made them complicit. Finally, Jen made a decision. I am invoking Council authority to summon a human representative. We will hear their explanation. We will judge their actions, and we will decide what must be done. The message was sent to Earth. 3 days later, a captured Krelix dreadnought approached the Council station. Its hull was scarred and marked with tallies. Thousands of small marks that took the Council's sensors several minutes to count. Each mark represented a Krelix killed. There were over 50,000. The ship docked. One human emerged. Katie Morris walked through the Council station wearing her old diplomatic uniform. It was torn and burned, stained with blood that might not all be hers. She carried no weapons. She didn't need to. The way she moved, the emptiness in her eyes, it was clear she was more dangerous than any weapon. Council security escorted her to the Great Chamber. As she walked, species from across the galaxy stopped to stare. They had never seen a human before. They whispered to each other, wondering if the stories were true. Katie entered the chamber. Hundreds of beings watched her from their seats arranged in circular tiers. At the center was High Speaker Jen, ancient and dignified. He looked at her with something between pity and fear. Ambassador Katie Morris of Earth, Jen said formally. You stand before the Galactic Council to answer for humanity's actions. You are accused of genocidal warfare, violation of the Convention of Mercy, and crimes against... Katie laughed. It wasn't a sound of humor. It was empty, mechanical, terrible. The sound echoed through the chamber, making several species flinch. You want to lecture us about mercy? Katie said. Her voice was quiet but carried perfectly in the acoustics of the chamber. Where were you when the Krelix burned our cities? Where was this council when they executed our children? Jen maintained his composure. Ambassador, you must understand. The council has laws against intervention in conflicts involving pre-spacefaring species. We cannot or would not, Katie interrupted. She walked forward, ignoring security protocols. Guards moved to stop her, but Jen waved them back. You have laws, fine. Your laws matter more than our lives. Your traditions matter more than our dead. You sat in this beautiful chamber and did nothing while we bled. A Valen elder stood. Ambassador Morris, we understand your anger. But you must understand our position. If we intervened every time a stronger species attacked a weaker one, we would be at war constantly. The Council exists to maintain peace among its members, not to police the galaxy. Katie turned to look at the elder. Then the Council is useless. You maintain peace by letting others die. You preserve your civilization by sacrificing ours. Tell me, elder, how many species have you watched burn while you stayed neutral? How many worlds have been destroyed while you debated procedure? The elder had no answer. Katie continued, addressing the entire chamber now. The Krelix came to our world. They didn't want to trade with us. They didn't want to learn from us. They wanted to break us, to make us understand that we were nothing, and they did it because they knew you wouldn't stop them. They knew the Council would look away. Jen activated a display. Footage appeared, showing human forces attacking a Krelix colony. Children running, screaming, dying. Ambassador, this is footage from the colony of Krelix 7. 2 million civilians lived there. Your forces killed them all. How do you justify this? Katie watched the footage without expression. She saw the fear on Krelix faces, saw them begging for mercy they wouldn't receive. She felt nothing. They taught us to do that, she said quietly. Every technique, every tactic, every act of cruelty you see in that footage, we learned from them. They came to Earth and showed us what the galaxy really is. A place where mercy gets you killed, where compassion is weakness, where only the strong survive by being cruel enough to terrify everyone else. So you become what you hate? Jen asked. You become monsters to fight monsters? We become survivors, Katie said. You want to judge us? Fine, judge away. But understand this. We begged for help. We offered everything we had for peace. We tried your way, High Speaker. We tried diplomacy and negotiation and mercy. The Krelix taught us that none of that matters. The only thing that matters is being dangerous enough that no one dares attack you. A younger council member, a being named Quinn from the Taros species, spoke up. Their voice was desperate. Ambassador, the Krelix government has contacted us. They're seeking peace with Earth. They're offering reparations, territory, anything you want. They're begging us to intercede. Surely you can show mercy now. Katie turned to Quinn slowly. Mercy? They want mercy now? After 3 months of occupation? After 2 billion dead? After they taught us that mercy is what gets your children executed? She shook her head. They can have the same mercy they showed us when we surrendered. The same mercy they showed our civilians. The same mercy they showed our children. The chamber fell silent. Katie's words hung in the air, terrible in their implications. Quinn tried again. But Ambassador, you're talking about wiping out an entire species. Billions of innocent lives who had nothing to do with the invasion. How many of those innocent lives sent soldiers to Earth? How many of them celebrated our conquest? How many of them benefited from the resources stripped from our world? Katie's voice remained that terrible whisper. Don't pretend the Krelix species is innocent. They built an empire on conquest. Earth wasn't their first victim. We're just the first to fight back hard enough that they noticed. Jen stood, his authority filling the chamber. Ambassador Morris, I understand your pain. Truly I do. But what you're proposing is the complete destruction of a sentient species. If the Council allows this, we betray every principle we stand for. We become complicit in genocide. Katie looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was tired. You were already complicit, High Speaker. You were complicit when you heard our distress calls and did nothing. You were complicit when you watched our cities burn and hid behind your laws. You were complicit when you decided some species matter and others don't. She gestured to the chamber around them. You built this place on the bones of weaker species. Every one of you here earned your seat by being strong enough to survive, by being dangerous enough to matter. The Council doesn't protect the weak. It protects itself. And now you're... The Council's threat never materialized. No fleets came to stop humanity. No armies mobilized to protect the Krelix. The representatives returned to their worlds and told their governments what they had seen. They described Katie Morris standing alone in the great chamber, empty-eyed and terrible, promising destruction to anyone who interfered. The Council's decision was practical. The Krelix had broken the peace by invading a world without provocation. Defending them would cost lives and resources. It wasn't worth it. So they did what they had always done. They looked away. The Krelix colonies fell one by one. Human forces moved through Krelix space like a plague, stopping at each world long enough to ensure nothing living remained. They were efficient about it. No torture. No cruelty for its own sake. Just quick, thorough extinction. On Earth, Dr. Helen Cross worked in her facility, monitoring the spread of the Lazarus effect. It had reached 90% of the surviving human population. The remaining 10% were either isolated or so far from affected areas that the effect hadn't reached them yet. But it would. It always did. She ran tests on herself weekly. The compassion centers of her brain showed minimal activity. The fear response was almost completely gone. She knew what she was becoming, what all humans were becoming. She knew she should feel horror about it, but horror required caring, and she didn't care anymore. Helen's assistant brought her a report. Dr. Cross were getting requests from other species. They want information about the Lazarus process. They think it could help them. Helen looked at the report. 3 species had contacted Earth requesting the technology. They had enemies of their own, threats they couldn't defeat through conventional means. They wanted what humanity had. They wanted to become weapons. Decline all requests, Helen said. The Lazarus effect can't be controlled. Once it starts spreading, it doesn't stop. Tell them we're not willing to inflict this on other species, even if they volunteer, especially if they volunteer. They don't understand what they're asking for. The assistant left. Helen went back to her work, analyzing neural patterns, documenting the changes in human psychology. She was creating the most comprehensive record of a species transformation in galactic history. Future scientists would study her work, try to understand how humanity went from compassionate to cold in less than a year, if there were any future scientists. If humanity didn't consume itself, if the Lazarus effect didn't spread beyond Earth to infect other species through proximity. There were a lot of ifs, and Helen couldn't predict which way things would go. She realized she didn't care about that either. General Jake Sullivan stood in what used to be the Pentagon, looking at maps of the galaxy. The Krelix were nearly extinct. A few thousand survived in scattered refugee groups hiding in Council space. Human forces tracked them, but didn't pursue into Council territory, for now. But the Krelix weren't the only concern. Other species were watching Earth carefully, some with fear, some with interest, some with hostility. They saw humanity as a threat, a species that had embraced genocide as policy. They were probably right. Jake's staff brought him reports from across the galaxy. Small species seeking Earth protection, larger species making subtle threats, the Council sending diplomatic messages that were really warnings. Everyone was trying to figure out where humanity fit in the new order. Jake made decisions quickly and without emotion. Alliance requests were evaluated based on strategic value. Threats were met with overwhelming force. The Council's warnings were ignored. Earth didn't need the Council's approval. Earth didn't need anything except the certainty that no one would dare attack them again. A young officer approached him. "General, we have a situation on the Outer Rim. A species called the Drex has been raiding our mining operations. Small attacks, a few casualties. Nothing major." Jake pulled up information on the Drex. They were a minor species, barely spacefaring, probably didn't understand what they were attacking. In the old days, humanity would have sent diplomats, would have tried to understand the situation, find a peaceful solution. "Dispatch a fleet," Jake said. "No survivors. Make it quick." The officer didn't question the order. No one questioned orders anymore. The fleet deployed within an hour. The Drex homeworld burned before the sun set on their capital city. An entire species erased because they had attacked human assets. Billions dead because some pirates had made the wrong choice. Jake received the completion report and filed it away. He felt nothing about it. The Drex had attacked humanity. Humanity responded. It was simple cause and effect. That's all it was. Danny Cooper led human forces deeper into space, hunting the last Krelix. His team had become legendary among both humans and aliens. They moved like death itself, appearing without warning, killing without mercy, disappearing before anyone could respond. They found a Krelix refugee ship hiding in a dead system. 500 survivors, mostly civilians who had escaped the colony purges. They weren't soldiers. They had no weapons. They were just trying to survive. Danny's team boarded the ship. The Krelix cowered in the cargo holds, begging for mercy in broken English. Some offered information about military installations. Some offered to become slaves. Some just cried. Danny walked through the ship looking at their faces. He saw children clinging to their parents. He saw old Krelix who could barely stand. He saw people who had nothing to do with the invasion of Earth. The old Danny would have hesitated. The old Danny would have seen innocents who deserved compassion, but the old Danny was gone and what remained saw only targets. Execute them all, he said. No survivors, his team complied. The sounds of weapons fire echoed through the ship for several minutes. Then silence. 500 more marks to add to the hull of their vessel. 500 more Krelix who would never threaten anyone again. They returned to their ship and departed. There was no celebration, no regret. Just the mission continuing as it always did. Katie Morris returned to Earth after her meeting with the Council. She landed in New York in the ruins where everything had started. The government had built a memorial here, a black wall carved with names. 2 billion of them, every person who died in the invasion, remembered in stone. Katie walked through the memorial reading names. She recognized some of them. Colleagues she had worked with, friends she had laughed with, people who had believed in a better future where humans and aliens could coexist peacefully. She should have wept for them. Should have felt grief for all that was lost. But she felt nothing. Just empty acknowledgement that these people had existed and now they didn't. A child approached her. She was maybe 10 years old, born during the invasion, raised in a world where the Lazarus effect was normal. She had never known humanity as it was before. "Excuse me," the girl said. "Are you Ambassador Morris?" "Yes. My teacher says we used to be different. That we used to cry for our enemies. Is that true?" Katie looked down at the child. She searched for the right words, for some way to explain what humanity had been before everything changed. But the words didn't come. The old Katie could have explained about compassion and mercy and hope. The new Katie just saw a child asking about outdated concepts. "Yes," Katie said finally. "Once upon a time humanity believed in mercy. We believed that even our enemies deserved compassion." She paused. "The galaxy taught us better." The girl nodded, accepting this like it was obvious. "Good. Teacher says we're safer now." "We are," Katie agreed. "No one will invade Earth again. No one will hurt us the way the Krelix did. We've made sure of that. By killing them all?" "Yes, that makes sense," the girl said. She smiled, but it was an empty expression, just muscles moving without real emotion behind it. "I'm going to be a soldier when I grow up. I'm going to protect Earth like you do." The girl walked away, joining a group of other children. They all moved with the same calm purposefulness, the same emotional flatness. They were the first generation born into the new humanity, and they would never know what was lost. Katie's communicator buzzed. It was Jake Sullivan with a report. A species on the outer rim had launched raids on human mining operations. Small attacks, minor casualties. The Drex the old Katie would have investigated, would have tried to understand why they were attacking, would have sought diplomatic solutions, attempted negotiation, found common ground. The new Katie's response was automatic. "Dispatch a fleet." "No survivors." "Make it quick, already done," Jake said. "The Drex homeworld is gone." "I wanted to inform you for the records," Katie acknowledged and ended the call. She stood in the memorial, surrounded by the names of the dead, and tried to feel something about the billions of Drex she had just erased. But there was nothing, just cold calculation that the threat had been eliminated efficiently. She walked to the section where Amy Fletcher's name was carved. The school teacher who had tried to save children. The woman who had begged for mercy and received none. Katie traced the letters with her finger, trying to remember what Amy had believed in. Trying to remember why it had mattered, but the memories were distant, like they belonged to someone else. The Katie who had cared about such things was gone. What remained was something colder, something harder, something that would never be vulnerable again. Far away, the Galactic Council monitored human expansion. Earth had